is as exemplary and reliable for the world.
Please go ahead.
I, of course, agree with everything my colleague has said. I just want to go one step further, and that is go into the innovation area, because Mahima talked about this. And from a regulatory point of view, it also means having regulatory science that is up to kind of not only global standards, but have scientific capabilities that are able to move to the new areas, not just on the old vaccines, particularly as India wants to innovate. And one of the things that I think is extraordinary is in these debates on whether new vaccines should roll out in India or not, if you talk to the elites of India, they all get their children immunized with every single antigen that exists out there. And so these vaccines are out. It's really an equity issue of whether we can get them out to the general population. So it's not only the fact that 50% are getting fully immunized, but there's these new products that aren't being rolled out. We've had a standard thing, and if we're going to do that, particularly if we're going to use innovative products, we have to be able to work in regulatory science around these innovative products.
Sir, if I could take you further on that, and you talked about introduction of new vaccines. The vaccine policy touches upon the criteria for selection of new vaccines, and I'll read it out to you. It talks about the disease burden, and the challenges that we have in assessing that, safety and efficacy. Important emphasis on this, affordability and financial sustainability of the vaccine program, even if the initial introduction is supported by an external funding agency. Program capacity to introduce a new antigen, including cold chain, availability of domestic capacity, cost effectiveness of the vaccine program. So with this backdrop, how do you see new vaccines being introduced in the immunization program?
Well, first of all, I think having strong research in the country, having strong surveillance is a sine qua non. Every country needs that. Certainly India needs that. So I am 1,000% supportive of strengthening that system. But one of the challenges is how much data does any country need to be able to make a decision? And so if you have studies now from 100 other countries that show, for example, that Haemophilus influenza type B meningitis is a major problem, and that vaccines can control that. And you have some studies in India that show the same thing, but you don't have a study in every state. You don't have a study across the country. Do you say, well, there's not enough data to make that decision? Or do you say, with the data we have from our own country, from the surrounding region, from the rest of the world, we can make a decision? So I think we can often use as an excuse not having the best and most appropriate data. What we need to do is look at the data globally to help make those decisions. Again, that doesn't mean that we don't need to improve the system that needs to be there. In terms of this issue of cost and sustainability, that is the critical issue. And India, of course, more than anywhere else, understands this fully, because if we get the Indian manufacturers engaged in large-scale manufacturing of these products, they will innovate and they will create a better cost profile for these products. So that's exactly what we need to get to. And with that, then, we will end up with products that are more sustainable. But we have to look at new vaccines in terms of cost effectiveness compared to the other investments. The slide you put up of investments in the healthcare system, we're investing in a lot of things that are not cost effective. If you look at the new vaccines, by any measure, they're cost effective even at the higher prices. So that's a little bit of a mind shift that says we might pay a little bit more for these new products, but we're doing that because it's going to prevent these terrible diseases. And now it's not only communicable diseases, it's what we traditionally call non-communicable diseases like cancers that are now being prevented by vaccines. Of course, they are connected to infectious agents, but we have to look at this as a cost-effectiveness phenomenon.
Right, you talked about R&D, and it's often said that the big five, who control 78% of the industry in value, tend to focus on products that are relevant to the economies that pay. What about the R&D that's relevant to countries like India? Dr. Parida, you lead the Vaccine Grand Challenge program, which is one of the 7 programs launched by DBT. Could you tell us a little more about this program, specifically in terms of R&D context for vaccine?
Yes, The Vaccine Grand Challenge program is modeled over the Grand Challenge, which is actually after mathematician David Hilbert. The focus is actually the principle, which is actually very well modeled by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Grand Challenge program over the last 7 years or so. And fortunately, I was a part of the movement from the beginning of this movement. The basic idea is to address bottlenecks and in an interdisciplinary way, and how to approach these problems from a broader perspective. Look at the bigger picture and look at. So the Vaccine Grand Challenge program, which is a DBT initiative with the own government of India money, is basically to create a pipeline of vaccines, starting from discovery to the pre-clinical development, to the clinical development, to policy and implementation. So it's a broad arcing pipeline to be developed, but it's too early. I am just this is my 8th month, and a lot of things are not in place yet. So we hope that things will take off in coming years with all the cooperations and support from everyone. And what is my vision perspective, at least I can say, is that to create a cohesive community to work on thematic approach than on individual project mode, because this is important first thing. And the second thing is that, as everybody has been alluded to, that we don't know the disease burden. Unless we map the landscape, we cannot make a strategy of what will be the next game. And if we don't know what means, so that part brings me to my own philosophy, which I already commented. If we don't look at why is the glass half empty, then we cannot even dream to make it full. So that is why we have a lot of things. We have to have openness, we have to have transparency, accountability, and a lot of things. So there is an issue of mindset has to go on. There was a comment made, we have a long road to go, but we have to start somewhere. So we need to begin somewhere. So there are certain initiatives which are beginning, but it needs everybody's participation. There has to be a collective ownership and collective responsibility as well.
Thanks, Dr. Pavita. 8 months is a long time. You'll soon be at the first anniversary. But just to add on, you talked about this program being done by DBT. The policy list, there are similar programs being done by ICMR, DST, CSIR, in addition to R&D in the private sector. Is there some mechanism of tying this all together, or are we working at cross purposes?
Absolutely fine. Means I can't really open up the Pandora box of my O's here, but I would just to say something from the very first day I have been preaching in a very passionate way, that we have to harmonize the harmonizers. So all these what you mentioned is I have been doing from the day one I have been, but I have not yet been able to bring everybody to the same table, even though I have individually talked at each level. But I still hope that this day will come, but I don't know when.
Right, because the policy also talks about mapping of the R&D that's going on today in India. And on the one hand, when you talk about resources being scarce, how are we ever going to have a focused approach so that the resources are aligned to what we need the most?
There are multiple problems, and actually most of the problems are human barriers. The issue is that I always believe, I am a product of this country, spent 22 years abroad and came back 8 months back, and I am still proud of the system, the education system here, and I still feel proud about it. The point what I want to say is that we have the brain power and manpower in the country, but we have not shown that tradition of working as a team, as a cohesive team and holding hand each other. We are all working in a silo. We have many great institutions doing fantastic research, even the industry. I do not want to say to figure it out, but we do not know how to connect one another. And it's very easy, but many of the leaders always preach. I always say that we have to practice first before preaching. So these traditions, the change of mindsetting and all these things has to come, and there has to be a bottom-up approach as well, because we need the community to feel these and bring the change. It's not the top-down approach. So this is where the ecosystem has to be created, and everyone has to be participatory in it with a responsible manner to put their 1 cent what to come up with.
Like you said, individual versus team, that's reflective in the way our cricket team is playing at this point of time. But Mahima, you have got it.
I just wanted to say something about innovation. Nothing quite spurs innovation